Hi everyone, welcome back to the Be Europe show. I'm Harry.
And I am Vlora from Eurodesk, and we are very happy to be here again for the episode number 6, which today takes us on a virtual journey through Ireland. Not really virtual, so because Harry, you are located there.
Yeah, correct. So I'm in Dublin, which is Ireland's capital. So for people who aren't familiar, it's situated in the east of the country. And Ireland, I think as a lot of people will know, is famous for being the land of saints and scholars. So Ireland is the birthplace of many well-known artists, from U2 to Oscar Wilde to Niall Horan from One Direction, to only name a few.
Wow, definitely a land of talented people. This might be because you grew up eating bacon and cabbage, which are some of the most traditional Irish foods. Or maybe it's the secret is the most well-known Irish drink, which is Guinness, the stout beer made from barley, hoops, and water.
Yeah, so Guinness is the national drink, I think, unofficially, and especially on St. Patrick's Day as well. So when parades take place, not just in Ireland, but in towns and cities across the world, on March 17th, Irish people everywhere from New York to Sydney celebrate being Irish, and they often enjoy a pint of Guinness.
Yeah, exactly. I can confirm I participated in some celebration, dress up with green colors, and it was really, really cool. Well, by the way, it looks like very entertaining country, Ireland. So I'm really jealous you're living there. But Ireland is also spectacular in terms of nature and landscapes. So it's no coincidence that Skilling Michael, I hope I said well, Harry, has been
Skellig
chosen.
Michael, close.
Okay, close. I was close by. So this place, by the way, has been chosen as the island which to film up the end of Star Wars. But also the cliffs of Moher have been the set of several movies, just like, for example, Harry Potter.
Yeah, we're very proud of our beautiful landscape and scenery, and plenty of famous films have been shot here in Ireland, at plenty of places from Skellig Michael, all the way across the country. But I know we could talk about Ireland all day and all the amazing places to visit while you're here, but I think it might be time to introduce our guests. So can we welcome
Yeah.
Orla and Aleesha?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey guys, how you getting on?
Great. Good.
Pleasure for being here.
Yeah, thanks for
so
having us.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us. And I think we start off by asking just everybody to introduce themselves and to talk a bit about themselves. So Orla, you might start and then we push over to Aleesha.
Sounds like a plan. So hi all, my name is Orla. I'm from County Kerry in the southwest of Ireland. And as you can see, I'm wearing my Kerry jersey at the moment. And I'm 22. I study languages, French, German, and Irish. And I'm currently on my Erasmus year studying in Würzburg in Germany.
Wow, amazing. And Aleesha, yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Aleesha. I'm 21. I'm a politics and French student in UCC, so in Cork, which is in the south of Ireland. And I've just come back from my Erasmus year. So I was in Lille in the north of France for 10 months and just came back last week. So now I'm in Cork and I have my setup back again, which is nice.
Yeah, it's not really easy.
Yeah.
Are you happy to be home in Cork?
Yeah, no, I am. I loved France, but there's no place like home. You really can't beat it. Just like the family, the friends, and those pubs that you just can't get in France, you know.
And the glorious sunshine. Sunshine.
Yeah, I think I got a tan.
Yeah. I don't think it's stopped raining here for the last 2 weeks, but nonetheless, the sun will shine again. Orla, could you maybe start by telling us a bit about what you're doing right now? So a bit about your studies and your work, and I suppose your overall experience also with Erasmus.
Yeah, sure thing. So I have to say, I'm thoroughly enjoying the Erasmus program. I've met so many wonderful people from all around the world and all walks of life here in Würzburg in Germany, and it's just been absolutely eye-opening. And I'm also really enjoying the immersion in the language. My German has come on so much since I've been here, so I'm doing German modules and French modules. So that's then French through German, which is a challenge in itself, but I'm really enjoying it. And I have to say the whole Erasmus year is going really well. I came to Würzburg last September. I had an intensive German language course before the university semester started. And the winter semester was unfortunately online, but thankfully the current semester is in person. And I'm really enjoying the summer semester now. It makes all the difference being in person. It's just so much easier to get to know the classmates, and especially my German classmates. And then I'm traveling as much as I can this semester before I go back to final year in Ireland in September. And I'm really enjoying that. I love how you can just hop on a train and travel throughout Europe so easily here. And so it's a great experience so far. And for me, my Erasmus program was a compulsory part of my degree, so I had to do it. But at the same time, I was extremely eager to do it, and I'd recommend it to anybody out there who's listening. Do an Erasmus. It's a great experience.
Brilliant. And
Great.
Aleesha, can you maybe tell us a bit about your work then as well? I know you're involved with the European pool of young journalists like myself, and I know you're doing the podcast as well. And you might talk a bit about that, but could you just talk a bit about your work generally?
Yeah, so I suppose primarily I'm a student as well. So I, agree with everything that Orla just said. Like, I just came back from Erasmus and I'm still digesting it all. But wow, like I can't even find the words to explain like the people I met, the things that I learned. My French came on like a lot during the time that I was there. And again, the travel as well was just so easy. Like, I was in Brussels all the time because it was just over the border. I could just get like a €9 train ticket and hop over, and I was there in 40 minutes. Like, it was incredible. Italy, first time going to Italy, I just got a train instead of a plane. It was really, really cool. So I definitely agree with everything that Orla said. And in terms of my work, so yeah, I'm on the European Pool of Young Journalists with Harry, and my main project would be podcast with my co-host Casper, and it's called Let's Queer Some Things Up, and it's all about LGBTQI plus issues. Little plug if you want to find it, do give it a listen. It's very good. And that would be my main project. And then also writing some articles for them. I'm also a youth worker with YMCA Ireland, which is where I'm at the moment. That's why I have the lovely setup. This is not available in West Cork, where I'm from. It's far too rural to have this sort of tech. So I'm a youth worker working with young people on global justice and youth advocacy. And other than that, I do a lot of volunteering with different groups as well, like Youth for the Environment in Europe, doing a podcast with them as well, called Voicing the Unheard, and Meet the Green Generation with Euronews. Doing lots of bits, mainly podcasting.
Wow.
Mainly podcasting would be the big one, and working with young people in like development education and youth advocacy.
Yeah, girls, you both are very much engaged and very busy, really. But I mean, the main question for me is like about your Erasmus experience. Of course, Aleesha, you just came back, and Orla, you are still enjoying it. And of course, some of your university program, it was mandatory for you to go on an Erasmus. But why you decided to pick up this train and go somewhere abroad? Where does this desire comes from inside of you, let's say?
Good question. For me, I was actually supposed to be on my Erasmus last year, but it was cancelled because of COVID. And I didn't want to do my final year of university online. So last year I decided to take a year out and go pairing with French and German family in Strasbourg in France. And then, as I'd been to France already, I said I'd go to Germany then for my Erasmus. And I had also only started learning German in university. So it made sense, seeing as I had my time in France, do Germany then. But I suppose for me, it's also because I'm a languages student, so it just makes sense. Go get the immersion and get the fluency in the language. But there was always also the desire to just explore the new country and experience the culture like firsthand. I've heard from so many people who've been on Erasmus, it was the best time of their life and everything. And so you'd always had that anticipation of, I'd like to do that someday.
Yeah, I can totally confirm what you're saying. Yeah, really, for me, it was the same. And I wasn't believing people saying, why it's to be such a big thing? I mean, come on, you're just going in another country studying, by the way, it's something boring. But definitely it's not like that. Really change your life, it changed your vision of life and your ambition, your perspective, everything, really. And for you, Aleesha?
Yeah, I think for me, it was something that I decided when I actually joined my degree. So when I finished school and I went into college, I decided I want to do an international degree, mainly because I'm doing a language. And for me, I think if you are doing a language, what better place to learn it than in the country? And when you learn a language, it's not just a language. There's a whole culture that comes with that. There's these very small intricacies when it comes to a word that carries a certain meaning, and you need to see the expression and the context and everything that goes with it. So I wanted to see that firsthand. And also, I think for me, the biggest thing, not to mind the actual skills that I picked up, but just the self-development. Like, it's for a lot of people, Erasmus is the first time that you leave home, the first time let alone like leaving your home, but leaving your country. You know what I mean? It was the first time that I'd ever lived abroad. I'd been abroad without my parents before for like 3 or 4 weeks maximum. But this was like, okay, pack your bags. You literally don't know anyone. Off you go. And it's terrifying. Like, it really is. Like, I'm not going to say it's easy. The first couple of weeks can be really, really jarring. But as soon as you stick with it and you settle and you meet people and you make that home for yourself somewhere else, you can't beat that. It opens your horizons so much. Like, before I would have thought, oh yeah, I'll stay in Ireland, long term. But now I'm like, oh, who knows? Like, I could, pack my bags and go get a job somewhere else in Europe, and it wouldn't faze me. So definitely, yeah, just the self-development that you gain, so much independence, so much insight into just how you cope in these kind of situations, and even who you are, like, away from your friends and family. You kind of get to recreate yourself almost, which can be fun. Yeah, it's really a fun and exciting experience in that way.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's an interesting point about experiencing the cultures. And Orla, you might speak a bit about, I suppose, has that made you feel more European now? Or does, I suppose, getting to experience new cultures and new countries, do you feel more European now than you did before your Erasmus experience?
I think so. I don't know about you, Orla. I think I do.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a tricky question. Probably, I think for me, like, being European probably means sharing a common identity and common values to a certain extent, and that openness and warmth with the other countries of Europe. But I think beforehand, before the Erasmus, you're probably just in your little bubble at home. Whereas I think I do feel more European now because of this experience of the Erasmus and having been away and having had that exposure to all the different countries and cultures. Definitely. It's not just that I feel Irish, but I also feel European.
Yeah. I suppose I suppose this is something we've spoken to a few people now in the last few episodes, and that's something they all kind of share is, I think, when you go abroad and you have that experience, while you might have an appreciation for being European when you're at home, it's when you leave and have those experiences that you feel a bit more European than you did before. And I know, Orla, you said what it means for you to be a European, but for Aleesha, for you, what do you think it means personally to be a European?
That's a tough one. Again, I think I would say that for a lot of young people, it varies a lot. I don't think that you get any kind of one answer. I think personally for me, because I'm Irish, I was born in Ireland and grew up in Ireland, went through the Irish education system, spoke Irish, the whole shebang. But my parents are German, so I would also have that influence at home of having kind of more German cultural roots. Even if we spoke English at home, I'd also speak a bit of German and understand it. And there'd be small parts of that I definitely carry with me, even when I'm out of the family setting. And people often say to me, they go like, oh, you're not really Irish though, are you? I can tell that you don't have a very, like, my accent isn't as strong as Harry's or Orla's, for example. So people always say, oh, there's something else lurking there. And that's the German in the background. So I always kind of had a sense of not really having one identity as such. So I would have always seen myself, I suppose, as pretty European, because my parents would have traveled a lot as well. And I think that although they're German by nationality, they're also very Irish. And my mother, for example, would have spent a lot of time in Italy, and my father would have spent a lot of time in France, so there was always that influence kind of growing up. And now that I've spent a year in France, I see it more and more. And I was spending a lot of time in Belgium. It's almost just seeing like Europe as one big country with loads of cultures in it for me. And that freedom to be able to experience them is just amazing. So I think for me, being European, again, would kind of mirror, I think, a bit what Orla said. It's just shared values. whether it be democracy, whether it be freedom of travel. These are the things that are really important to me, and that's why I think I identify with that European identity, as it were. And that's why you find a lot of common ground with other young people when you travel through Europe, is because you're all different, but at the same time you have a lot in common. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, it is. I think that's a really interesting point, and it's something I suppose I've learned over time, is that you're right. There is so many differences, and like there is a lot of cultural differences, but really there is a lot that connects us as well, and that sense of European, or being European, does just connect us. Orla, I'm asking the question, I suppose. I have my own opinions of it, obviously, as a young person in Ireland, and I know what Europe means to me. But how do you think young people in Ireland view Europe? We're obviously very pro-European. Every poll that you look at says that we're very pro-Europe. But for you, how do you think young people from across Ireland feel about Europe? And do you think they're as engaged or as interested in the opportunities that come from being a part of the EU?
Well, as you said, we would view it quite positively, and that would definitely have been my experience up to now with my friends and other young people that I've encountered, and of my own view as well. And in terms of like opportunities and kind of the experiences, as I would say, for myself, I was very fortunate to go on 2-week-long exchanges while I was in school. That one was organised through my school, so my class did an exchange with a class from school in the Netherlands. And then the second exchange came through volunteering with Kerry Diocesan Youth Service, which is a wonderful charity that supports young people. And through KDYS, we got to do a music exchange with a group of people from Budapest in Hungary. And that was great. I'm still great friends with one of the guys from it. And he's actually a friend who I visited last week in Denmark, because he's studying there at the moment. But I think in terms of the opportunities in general, I think it depends on where you're from. Like, say, I'm from the countryside in the southwest of Ireland, and say, speaking from the view of having grown up in the country, I think I'd say there's a lack of knowledge about the opportunities to go abroad. Like, of course, we all heard about the Erasmus study abroad period and other opportunities, but in that sense, I'd never heard of like the Erasmus Plus or the Workaway program. I only heard about that when I came in contact with young people from outside of Ireland. Say when I was 16, a lot of foreign students came to my school for a year, and I got really close with 3 of the German girls, which is actually part of why I chose to take up German in university. And I remember being amazed at the opportunities that one of the German girls in particular from Hamburg had been exposed to, such as like multiple exchanges and Model United Nations programs and competitions and all that. And I, being from the countryside, hadn't heard of those opportunities. And I kind of thought, it's a pity that our guidance counsellors didn't tell us more about those things in school and educate us more. But I would say definitely in the bigger cities in Ireland, such as maybe Dublin or Cork or Limerick, there's probably more knowledge about those opportunities. And because there are plenty of opportunities out there, it's just getting the knowledge out to the people, and especially the young people.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant point. And it's actually really interesting, because we've had, this is our 6th episode now, and no matter who we speak to and no matter which country they're from, that point comes up time and again, which is that actually there is a divide, even no matter where you are, between the cities and the rural parts of countries, where the information doesn't quite get out there to some people in rural parts of the countries. I know it's a problem here in Ireland, but it's a problem that I suppose a lot of countries experience too. So it is, I think, a huge issue. And I know for the European Year of Youth, that's one of the focuses, is to try have a bit more of inclusion and diversity in programs, and to reach more people who haven't been reached before. And Aleesha, I suppose I'm interested to know for you as well what I suppose it means, or what you think it means for young people to be European. Do you think there is that sense of being European here? And then also, I suppose, talking about the obstacles a small bit, I know we've had this conversation before, because English is my only language. I speak a small bit of German, but I know there's a lot of people like me who only have English. And I suppose we kind of look at these opportunities and are quite limited by it. Do you think that's an issue for young people? So there's two questions there. I suppose the first one is Ireland and how young people see, or how Irish young people see Europe. And then the second one is, I suppose, do you feel that sometimes there's a bit of a limitation there because of our language skills or lack thereof?
Yeah, so I think especially, Ireland being an island, I think does come into play a little bit because we're not on the continent. Neither is the UK. But that being said, they have a very strong kind of identity of their own. That's why Brexit happened. We won't get into that though. But us being separate from the continent, I think definitely does come into play when it means being European. Like say I'd have cousins from Germany who feel very much European from the start, because they would regularly cross borders and visit other countries for holidays. They go to the South of France and they would just hop on a train. Whereas I think maybe the reason why Irish people, or Irish young people in particular, might feel less European in that sense could even just be down to geography. The fact that we really have to hop on a flight. And it's less accessible often to get onto the continent, to get into it. And because, as Orla was saying, there's such a kind of disparity when it comes to those opportunities, or, learning about those opportunities. When it comes to rural-urban divide is huge in Ireland. We have like 2, 3, 4 big cities, and the rest is really like small villages, and sometimes not even that. Like it's houses just kind of on their own in the middle of a field. Like I would know that's where I came from. And I would think that like Orla, I was more kind of almost by luck, I suppose, of just having the right people in my life to kind of tell me about these things. But if 1 or 2 of those adults weren't there to tell me about those things, like Erasmus or like an international degree or like European Solidarity Corps, I wouldn't have gotten involved at all. So that would be my answer to the first question. And in terms of language, yeah, we spoke about this before, because it's interesting how, I suppose in Ireland, because English is our first language, it's very easy to become comfortable in just speaking English, because you know that, you're going to go to the continent and everyone's going to be able to speak English to a degree, or you'll be able to get by at least, even if it's only every second or third person you meet who speaks English. It's easier to do that than to come to Ireland, for example, only speaking Italian or French, or German or any other language, because you have to be lucky to find someone who speaks that language. So I think that we can become I think generally as a culture, we become a bit complacent when it comes to our language skills. And that could be down to the way that it's taught. Like I personally think there's a lot of progress to be made in the way that we're taught languages. In secondary school, even, it's kind of done in a very like technical way. You don't really bring the culture into it. Even when it comes to Irish, I think there's a lot to be done with how we're taught Irish. For those who don't know, we have 2 main languages in Ireland. It's English and Irish, or Gaeilge. And when I was kind of on the continent in France or in Germany, I would hear people be like, "Oh my God, what? You have your own language?" I'd be like, "Yeah, we do. It's actually really beautiful, but unfortunately, not many of us speak it as well as we'd like to." And I think that it can kind of, I suppose, maybe alienate a little bit, because with each new language that you add to your list, you open up a whole new world of people who you can talk to. That would be the main reason why I would even get interested in speaking a new language, is because if you don't, you'll never be able to talk to that person. And we kind of have this sense that other people will come to us. But I think we need to kind of reach out a bit more and come to other people, as it were. So I think there's a lot to be done, kind of mainly in the Irish education system, to kind of make sure that we're really up there with other European young people. Because we were doing an article for the European Pool of Young Journalists recently, and I was looking into it, and I think most European young people from continental Europe speak between 2 and 5 languages. And I was like, oh my God, a lot of us speak 1, maybe 2, if you're lucky 3. But it comes out of necessity. I suppose if you're growing up in Poland and you want to reach those opportunities for jobs or whatever, you have to learn English. And another one would be good. If you have German, brilliant. So I think definitely there's a lot to be done there. But I think that Ireland is kind of an outlier in that sense.
Great. Wow. A lot of inputs to reflect on, really. Orla, let's just move on a little bit because we have plenty of questions for you. So let's now go and explore another topic that we would really like to tackle with this episode. Both of you have been in different European countries, so you had the chance to really see with your eyes the cultures. And what did you notice that is very similar among European countries, and what are the differences that you really notice and that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, good question. Also, I really agree with all of what you just said there, what Aleesha just said. And in terms of similarities, do you know what I think? It's that everyone's human in all the different countries. A smile goes a long way. There's a lot of, even if we speak different languages, there's the humanity of somebody helping you if you've dropped something or if you're lost or if you're whatever, even if you're from a different country. There's definitely that similarity. There's still a lot of kindness out there. And in terms of the differences, well, I think I'd say maybe a bit more sunshine on the continent, for one. And then the public transport is a lot better in France and in Germany than it is in Ireland. France and Germany have fast speed trains, which I wish we had in Ireland. And they also cycle a lot more. In Strasbourg, I hardly ever used public transport. I'd say I could count on one hand how often I used public transport in my time that I was there. Their cycle lanes were just so good that I cycled everywhere and I felt safe. And they even had some roads where bikes took priorities over cars. And I also found it interesting how people express themselves differently in France and in Germany, that they're much more direct in French and in German, that in English we kind of tend to, well, certainly in Ireland, we tend to beat around the bush a little bit and use softer and nicer language. Like, I don't know, off the top of my head, just a silly example, we might say, I think I'll go to the shop. But in French and in German, they'd say, I am going to the shop. Not I think I am, because I know I am. And, I've made up my mind, so I should be direct and say what I'm going to do. And I found sort of that difference refreshing and eye-opening, and definitely eye-opening about how I speak myself, I have to say. And another difference is that the semester is really different in Germany. The winter semester starts in mid-October and goes until mid-February. Then we had a 2-month break from the end of February until the end of April. And then the summer semester starts at the end of April and goes right through the summer until the start of August. So, I'm still in my summer semester here. I'm still studying with the sun shining in the window. Whereas in Ireland, and I'm quite sure it's similar in France, the autumn semester is from September until Christmas, and then the spring semester is from January until mid-May, and then you have the summer off. Hence why Aleesha is now back home in Cork.
Yeah, great. A lot of difference is actually to reflect. Really, I never thought about these languages, this way of expressing yourself that really makes a difference when you speak about something. So yeah, good thing that you pointed this out, really. And Aleesha, what about you?
Yeah, I never reflected on the language thing before, but I think that that's so true. And especially now that I think about it, because my parents are from Germany, sometimes they would almost joke when I said things in a really Irish way. I remember once I said somebody passed away, and that means that somebody's died. And I remember my stepmom just going what, wait, why would you say passed away? Somebody died. Why don't you just say that they died? And I was like, but passed away is softer and nicer, and it's not as harsh. And she was like, but they died. And I was like, okay, yeah, fine. And I was just reflecting, it's definitely a cultural thing that I suppose I've definitely found it with German that much more direct, although not as harsh as the stereotypes might say. German people are lovely. Just, yeah. People like to think that they're very kind of cold people, but it's not true at all. And yeah, I think definitely just, humanity, as Orla said, even when my French was still coming along and I wouldn't know a word for something or whatever, you'd be surprised how you just get by. And if people want to understand what you're saying, you know, they actually will try. That nice people are nice people no matter where you are. And definitely differences. Yeah, the semester is quite similar in France as in Ireland. So I wasn't too surprised there. But what I was surprised about is that, for me anyway, lectures began at 8 a.m., which is far too early, in my opinion. And yeah, and wait for it. And they finished at 8 p.m. So sometimes I'd have days where I was in college like 12 hours. And also in Ireland, lectures are generally like 50 minutes to an hour. And in France, they're 2 hours. So you'd get in, you'd sit down, and after 40 minutes, you're just like seeing unicorns in front of your eyes because your brain just shuts off. So that was definitely something that took me like a good 3 months to adjust to. And I know that in terms of exams, even, that there's like lots of differences. I've friends who are Italian, and they said that all their exams would have been oral, that they would have like had to memorize loads of stuff, sit down and talk to somebody. They'd be like, okay, talk about chapter 2 of that book. Whereas for us, we'd be very essay based in Ireland. We'd write loads of essays. We'd be very good at writing kind of very structured answers and stuff. And I had friends then who were Italian. They were like, I have no idea how to do this. I've never done this before. So there's definitely a lot of differences to the systems. But again, I feel like there are some differences as well when it comes to humor, particularly like dark humor, that sometimes the people who aren't Irish sometimes don't really appreciate. I think sometimes we can have a very brutal sense of humor in Ireland. So you have to be careful and make sure you say, oh, I'm joking, by the way, because otherwise some people they don't want to be your friend anymore.
Yeah, saying I'm joking, it's always save you.
Yeah,
so
just in
make
case.
sure you mention this, just in case, exactly. Yeah. By the way, we talked about all this cultural diversity that we have in Europe, and both of you have somehow experienced, but also for you, Aleesha, you are really the best example, let's say, of young European people, because we all come, not all, but most of us have the parents coming from another country, but grow up in another one, and then spend a lot of their time studying abroad, etc. Also for you, Orla, you studied a lot in different countries. What is your opinion about this rich cultural diversity that we have in Europe? Do you think it's something that really differentiates Europeans from any other continent in the world, or what is your opinion about that?
I would say that I think that in terms of Europe, although there's a lot that we said that kind of, I suppose a lot of similarities, at the same time, it's amazing how you can cross a border, go 30 kilometers east, and suddenly things are completely different. In terms of even dialect is suddenly spoken, and you're just sitting there like, what are they talking about? I know, for example, like I have friends who are Italian, they say like you can literally go to certain areas in the south of Italy and they don't know what people are saying. They're like, oh, I thought I spoke Italian and then I went to this place. You could even say the same for Ireland when it comes to like, different accents. Sometimes like I'm from like West Cork, and it's a very rural area. If you had somebody coming from like the south of Dublin and going down and speaking to like one of the people who work in the shop here, they wouldn't know what they're saying. So I think that there definitely is like it's amazing, these pockets, like even within countries, these pockets of culture. For example, in Ireland, that there's these places called Gaeltachts where they only speak Irish in those areas. I mean, most people do speak English as well, but their first go-to will be Irish. So I feel like there's so much richness within Europe that maybe you don't find so much. I know I was just instantly comparing it to like the United States. I know that there's very rich cultures in each state, but equally I feel like it's more kind of homogenous, whereas in I suppose it's the language, isn't it? I think it's the language that really carries a lot with it, and that to me is very special about Europe. I know the same can be said for like a lot of African countries, would probably mirror that in a similar way as well, because they carry these very specific language connotations. There's a lot of diversity of language in African countries as well. So I suppose that would mirror that quite well. But I think, yeah, incredible richness to it would be what my first thought.
I completely agree.
Yeah, the differences in the languages is interesting. I always think even just English in itself, and I'm always so careful to try to speak so clear and to articulate what I'm trying to say properly. But when I'm at home, or even, I think both of you are quite of interesting. So Orla, Kerry is very thick accent, yeah, usually, and like even for me, I struggle to understand sometimes. And then even in West Cork, Aleesha, it's the same. It can be really hard to sometimes decipher what people are saying. But it's so funny. We can speak the same language, but just by adding a certain accent or a few words of slang, it can mean completely different things to different people. But it's quite interesting. And I think what I'd be interested in knowing, Orla, is for you now, obviously you're on your Erasmus, so you're experiencing one of the many benefits of being European and being a young European, the freedom of travel, the freedom to be able to study where you want. But I suppose, look, they can be your answers, but what do you think are the most important advantages of being a young European?
Well, definitely what you said there. And
that's the question for you, sorry.
Not at all. I think definitely the free movement of goods and the common currency, and of course then the travel. The common currency was an interesting one. That when I was in Denmark there last week visiting my friend, that I think is it the Danish krone that they have, and so that was interesting for me. Then having to go up and trying to convert everything to see, well, how much is that in euros? So that was really interesting. But in general, I think, yeah, the euro definitely makes it easier, but just the freedom of movement and just the advantages of being a member of the European Union. And like, say, for me, when I came to Germany when I was 16 to visit one of the German girls that had been in my school for a year, we took a day trip over the border to the Netherlands, and I was mind blown at the idea of just nipping over the border for a day trip. The concept was just unknown to me, as in Ireland, as you know, we have to take a ship or a plane to go to another country. So I think it's a wonderful advantage to be able to travel between countries so easily.
Yeah, and that's really interesting as well. It's that the freedom of travel is something we just don't have an appreciation for, and I don't like it. One thing I really think we miss out on as young Irish people is that ability to be able to travel so conveniently from country to country. And I know if you're part of the Discovery EU, by the way, I always mention it as well from an Irish point of view, is that the EU will cover your flight to mainland Europe if you win one of the Interrail passes for the summer. I always think it's really important, because a lot of people don't understand that, is that they think they have to pay for their flight to be able to get to the location to start their journey, but they can actually do that. The EU will cover their flight, so it's always important to say. Aleesha, for yourself then, advantages, is there anything that kind of stands out that Orla might have mentioned?
Not that I can think of. I think you covered it really, really well. Yeah, common currency is a huge one, and freedom of travel, you don't notice it until it's gone. You know, it's really that. You know, I have friends from the UK, and they were talking about having to get their visa for Erasmus. I was like, what? You forget how lucky we are, really, yeah, to be able to just hop on a train and not have to worry about crossing the border. So yeah, that's the biggest one for me. And again, yeah, you don't know till you lose it. Definitely a big one.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And from my side, the best part, if I can say, is the roaming. I really love when I go abroad and I am able to go on Google Maps and know where I have to go to reach the place I need to be. So that's, for me, was the best change that happened recently, by the way. So I wish they will keep it forever. Yeah. By the way, girls, as you know, this is the European Year of Youth. Aleesha is really much involved in that, let's say, because you are also part of the European pool of young journalists. So of course, you know it very well. What is it about? But what are your plans for this special year, which is all dedicated to young people?
Well, I'll let Orla go first, because
I'm sure you have plenty of exciting plans to share, Aleesha. For myself, it's just to travel lots and improve my languages as much as I can before I return to Ireland for my final year of studies and being stuck in the books. So I'll also be working in a guest house in Strasbourg for the month of August. And then when I return to Ireland in September, I'll be living in Teach na Gaeilge, the Irish-speaking accommodation on campus in my university. So I'm really looking forward to that and having the immersion in my native tongue for the upcoming academic year, seeing as I've had it in the French and the German up to now. And then I also recently qualified as a ski instructor. So I'll be working as a ski instructor in Austria for a few weeks during the Christmas breaks. And then as for the future after that, who knows? We'll see. I'd love to work with my languages in the European Union, but we'll see what doors open between now and then.
Good luck.
Wow. I'm so jealous of the skiing. Oh my God, I went once. I am not very good at it, I'll tell you that much. For me anyway, I suppose this is the first year that I'm like working as a youth worker with the YMCA. So for the European Year of Youth, for me, it's really working with people younger than me and making sure that they know about these kind of opportunities. Even today I was working and kind of talking to 14, 15-year-olds, telling them about my course, about my Erasmus, stuff like that, and really passing on that information and showing them what's possible. So I'm hopefully becoming the adult that I kind of wish that I had when I was that age. So yeah, that's kind of my plan, is to continue with that, you know, get my final year in the back pocket, get my degree, and yeah, we'll see after that. Plan is hopefully move to Brussels. We'll see. Me and Harry were talking about this. I love that city. I'll come join you, Vlora.
Yeah, please.
big fan of Brussels, and I don't want to, I suppose, focus on the negatives, but I suppose for the European Year of Youth in itself, if you could both pick one thing that I suppose from a youth point of view that you'd like to see changed, or positive action you'd like to see during this year, what would it be? I might start with you, Orla.
I think listening to the young people and having their voices actually heard and taken more seriously. Like even, for example, with young people trying to speak up about climate change and it is yet to be taken seriously enough. I think it would be brilliant if they were listened to and actually properly taken seriously, if I was to name just one.
Yeah, that's great. And Aleesha?
I am gonna steal that, because honestly, there's a few main ones, particularly I suppose in Ireland. You know, housing is a huge one. We have an awful housing crisis at the moment. Climate change is, you know, on our doorstep, and the young people are worried, and we're really worried about our future. And yeah, I hope that this European Year of Youth that will be taken a bit more seriously, because we do have a lot to say.
You're here.
Yeah, really. And just to conclude, this interview, which already gave a lot of inputs and a lot of suggestions and advices to young people who are going to listen, what is your final, let's say, suggestion and advice that you would like to share among young people?
I think I'd say believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself, you're halfway there. And don't be afraid to push yourself and do the unknown. And it's outside the comfort zone that the magic happens. And work hard, don't worry about the future, and have fun, and it'll work out. My mom always gave me the great advice when I was in school: just do your best today, focus on giving your best today. And if you do your best each today and in each moment, tomorrow and all the rest will work out.
Wow,
Amazing.
great advice, really.
I love that. I think for me, stay curious. Every time you have a question in your head, Google it, ask someone, get involved, say yes to things. You know, if any opportunity comes your way, just say yes, see what happens, so long as it's safe, obviously.
Yeah.
Don't do anything silly. But yeah, really just say yes to the opportunities that come your way, and you'll be amazed. One thing leads to another, and you'll find yourself in the most amazing places because of it.
Lovely note to finish on. Yeah, I don't think there's any better way to end a podcast than those pieces of great advice. Thank you so much, Orla and Aleesha, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Brilliant to be here.
Thank you, really. It was really inspiring and encouraging also for me, even if I'm, let's say, old now, but still,
You're not old,
I mean, it was really... Yeah, I'm 30, so already out of the Erasmus range, let's say so.
Still young at heart.
Yeah. Okay, girls. So thank you a lot. And yeah, for the people listening, you will find this episode on Spotify and on YouTube if you want to listen to it again or watch it. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much.